So you just found out you're going to be a new dad. You're excited and terrified, and let's be honest, you've got no idea what to expect. At the same time, you've got this sneaky suspicion that people aren't telling you the full story. So what's the truth about pregnancy for a dad? Fatherhood isn't just about cute baby clothes and ultrasounds. It's also about navigating stress, fears, and challenges that no one really tells you about. I'm here to give you the raw, unfiltered reality of what it's like to be an expecting dad. Having been on the journey for 7 months myself and talking to the over 40 members of my dad's community. Just by watching this video, you're going to be in a better position than 99% of other dads because you're going to learn what it's really like from people that have been in the trenches. So stick around, we're about to get brutally honest. Before we get started, let me ask you, how many people have asked you how you're doing on this process so far, including midwives, doctors, and any other medical staff? If you're anything like me, it's a big fat zero, and that's because of hard truth number one. You have to be the stuntman. Let me explain. I've been a stuntman for over 12 years now. This is how it goes. We take the hits on camera so that the stars can take the glory. That's just how it goes. Now, a friend of mine actually had this happen to him where he did a massive fight during Game of Thrones for an actress, and when she went on her tour, she would tell everyone how she did it all herself. She got loads of accolades and praise for being this amazing fighter. But in the background, my friend was the one going, I did that. Now, on the next season of Game of Thrones, she came over and said, hey, I'm really sorry about that, but you know how it goes. That's the business. And that's the point. That is the business. And in the same way, in this context of the pregnancy, your missus, your wife, your pregnant partner is the star. Let's be honest, sometimes you can be a diva. More about that later. But she is the star of the show. And you're the stuntman. You got to be the one in the background, taking the hits, organizing things, and keeping everyone happy, even though you don't necessarily get the praise, because that's the business. Now, here's the point. Just because no one's asking you how you're doing doesn't mean you don't get to look after yourself. Just like a stuntman needs to stay in shape in order to do his best as a stuntman, you need to stay in shape physically and mentally so that you can be the best you can be for your wife or pregnant partner. Now, I made the mistake in the past of rushing around, helping everyone else, making sure everything is sorted without looking after myself. And then I realized being a dad is the biggest role of my life. And if I'm going to do well at that role, then I need to make sure that I am in peak physical and mental condition. I actually did a 21-day challenge to get myself into peak physical and mental condition. I enjoyed it so much and lost a ton of weight and also found some clarity that I've been running it every month since. And if you want to join me for that, all you got to do is go to the link below to join me in my free community. Anyway, the point of brutal truth number one is you're not the star, you're the stuntman. And that's okay. Just make sure you look after yourself and remember, stuntman's cooler anyway. Before the next brutal truth, I just need to tell you about the story of when I found out I was going to be a dad. It doesn't go the way you expect it to. You see, we'd been trying for at least a couple of months when my partner called me into the kitchen and said, hey, I've got news. And she told me and announced that she was pregnant. The strangest thing happened. Even though I wanted to have kids and were planning to have kids, I had this overwhelming fear and anxiety and numbness come over me. I actually grabbed her to hug her, not just to celebrate, but also to hide my face because I'm pretty sure I was a bit like, in hindsight, I was probably in shock. But at the time I thought, what's wrong with me? Maybe I don't want kids. Maybe I'm not going to be a good dad. I had a whole lot of feelings, which leads us to brutal truth number two. You're going to get a lot of feelings, and most of them are temporary. Now, back to my story. After a few days of knowing I was going to be a dad, I actually started to settle in. And I didn't feel stressed or anxious all the time. I kind of was a bit more excited. And that excitement has been growing every day since. The point is, don't take any of your emotions too seriously. A lot of them are temporary. A lot of guys don't realize, but just like your partner is changing in her body and her brain, so are you. Your hormones are changing and actually are matching hers. Your brain is also changing, and the parts of the brain that are about threat detection and problem solving are getting more activated. The result is that you may feel emotions that you haven't felt before. You may have thoughts that don't really make sense. Don't hang on to any of those too tightly. I like to think about it like this. It's like your emotional system is trying to stretch out so it feels all these different things and prepares you for when you have a child, and you're going to need to feel all these different emotions that maybe you haven't felt that much as a guy before. Honor your emotions and take each day as it comes. I actually found myself been far more emotional, crying at adverts and songs, and if I'm honest, I kind of liked it. Don't you bloody tell anyone. I found talking to other dads really helped out because a lot of them told me the same thing, which is why I suggest always joining a community or at least reaching out to your brother, family, friends, anyone you can. And if you need a community, of course, you're welcome to come join mine. Now, failing to navigate these new emotions will only make brutal truth number 3 that much worse. Your relationship is about to get chaotic. And for this, we can thank physics. You see, Sir Isaac Newton showed us how 3 bodies orbiting one another made it impossible to predict where each one of them would be relative to the other. He called this the 3-body problem. There were too many variables to actually be able to solve this problem. So what does this have to do with you? Well, just like the 3-body problem of Isaac Newton, you have a 3-body problem in your house. There's you, there's your partner, and there's this little human growing inside of her. All 3 have too many variables to be able to predict what's going to happen. All of you are kind of these unknown quantities. What can you do about it? Well, you've got to be the coolest person in the room. You've got to start getting used to change. Now, a massive mistake I made with this was expecting my partner to be the same and our relationship to be the same as it was the whole time. What happened was I was holding her to the same standards that were pre-pregnancy. So I expected her to act the same way. I expected her to do the same things. And it caused a lot of fights. In fact, hilariously, one day after we had a fight, she said, "Of course I'm not rational. I'm pregnant." And although it's funny, it made me realize that I had not respected that she was going to be irrational, and sometimes I was going to be irrational. And I had to let her off the hook, and I let myself off the hook. I couldn't get bogged down in these arguments. Sometimes we argued over really small things. One was over the word now. There was a washing basket, and she asked me to take it down. I thought she meant at some point in the day. So I went downstairs, made myself a coffee, had some breakfast, and she was furious. Why? Because she meant, can you take the washing down now? It was a whole day before we realized that now was the problem. Communication is key when you're dealing with this type of chaos. And anyway, when these fights come up, you have to ask yourself, do you want to be right or do you want peace? And I can tell you that little baby inside of your pregnant partner, well, they definitely want peace. Just like I think having more emotions is your body's way of getting used to this new emotional state, I think these arguments can be quite good. It's a way of pushing each other's buttons and seeing how quickly you can resolve these problems. So by the time the baby arrives, you've got used to saying sorry, you've got used to forgiving each other, and that is very important. Now, I can tell you, after all of these fights, me and my partner are closer than ever because we've kind of been through this hellfire. So if you're arguing, just know it's quite normal. Pregnant couples argue 2 to 8.5 times more than normal. That part's normal. Just make sure you can make up afterwards and that you learn from each argument and you get better at making up going forward and you get better at communicating. A quote that has helped me no end is from the Stoic Seneca, who wrote, "The greatest remedy to anger is delay." So if you're getting angry, go for a walk, take some time out. Usually by the next day, everything is settled, but even sooner than that, just take yourself out of the situation for a little while. Now, another thing that's going to get chaotic is how much your partner is going to change in your eyes. And there's no other way to say this. They're going to get a little bit gross. And it's actually going to get worse and worse up until the birth of your child. What do I mean? I mean, she's going to pee herself a lot if she laughs or sneezes, which is kind of funny. But at first you're like, whoa. She may fart. Hate to break it to you. That's going to happen. And she may even start snoring a lot at night too. So it's not her fault. Her body's changing. There's a baby pushing against parts of her body. And like I say, during labor, during birth, things are going to get even crazier. So just take this in your stride and also know that it's going to bring you closer together and it's going to desensitize you to these things because, trust me, your baby's not going to be thinking about your sensibilities when they're going into their diaper, if you know what I mean. The other part of the relationship that changes massively is sex. And people don't often talk about this, but initially, the sex drive can go up and you're like, wow, everyone's glowing, everyone's excited. And the pressure of having a kid is now taken off because that can be its own problem. But then as your partner gets bigger, it can get a bit weird to have sex. You can feel weird about it. They can feel weird about it. They may feel more self-conscious. And with all this going on, you've just got to keep those communication lines open, talk to each other, and try and navigate this. And also find ways to love each other that are not just about sex. Find ways to communicate and express your love not necessarily just physically through the act of sex. And this leads me nicely to hard truth number 4. Love can look very different between you and her. So as an expecting dad, one of your primary roles you'll see is financial. You'll want to take more hours, you'll want to work more, save money, do all these things, maybe buy baby products, maybe sort the nursery out, and you may show your love indirectly through these purchases and the extra work you're doing. Now, fair or unfair, your partner doesn't always see it like that. What does she want? She wants you to show you her love via doing more chores around the house. She's super uncomfortable during most of this pregnancy, so she wants you to empty the dishwasher when you see it's full. She wants you to cook a meal every now and then, do things for her around the house, generally help out and make her life a little bit easier. And that goes a much longer way, I found, than actually buying things. Although, by all means, buy gifts, and more about that in the next truth. But the real key point here is help out. And sometimes that's as simple as just listening. And for the love of God, don't make the mistake I made, which was fix the problem as it comes up. Just hold off on the fixing. Listen to them, say that's awful, that's annoying, how can I help? Those kind of questions will go a lot further than you trying to fix the problem. And the great thing is, all the things I mentioned are free. And that really helps out with hard truth number 5. Kids cost money. A new baby is actually not that expensive. Now, that's assuming that you don't get suckered into buying the latest and the best gadgets of everything, because a lot of them are just not useful and you don't even know what you're really going to need until much later. Now, I'm very lucky. My missus was amazing with this. She used Facebook Marketplace, Vinted, and I spoke to another dad who said he used FreeCycle and got 2 cribs for £500 each on there for free. So use these places to your advantage. That being said, you're going to have to pay for some things, of course. I suggest starting to save as early as possible. I personally like to put 20% aside of every paycheck, and this does a couple of things. It quickly adds up and also gets you into a good habit of saving, which is going to be important if you're going to be looking after a little one going forward. Other tricks and hints I like to put in are make sure you make a list. Making a list is going to make sure that you don't duplicate on items and you only get what you need. It's less than you think. In fact, to help you out, I've got a newborn essentials list that is in my community, so go check that out. You can also use this list to give to family and friends who are going to be wanting to help you out, and that way you can tick things off and make sure that you don't buy unnecessary things. And that's one of the biggest costs, is buying things that you don't actually need. So please use the list, show family and friends, and slowly acquire these things. Now, another tip is if you use Amazon wishlist and you buy something, I think over £20, then you'll end up getting a free bundle closer to your due date, which is pretty cool because free stuff is really cool. Now, 2 more tips on this money thing. 1, wait a while before you buy some of the items. Once the baby's born, things are just a click away these days, so you don't need to have a stockpile. And also, if you wait a while, it's going to mean that family and friends can buy you some items, and then you can buy the rest of the things in the last couple of months. That way you don't also have to store them in your house. Now, the last hint or tip is that I like to buy my pregnant partner stuff because I wanted to feel part of the process, and that really helped. And also I wanted to show her that I cared about her. I didn't like seeing her in discomfort, so I was always trying different things. However, after doing all that, I found that there were only 5 items that she really used and 5 items that she swears by. And if you want to know what those are, check this video next, and I'll see you on the next video.